All right, let's talk about my beautiful Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo.
Boy, do I love me some Josh Allen. I've been riding that bucking Bronco for how many years in fantasy now, just year after year, grabbing my boy in that auction. No dollar amount is too high. Let's talk about 2023.
What if he had no wide receivers? Are you still
No.
riding?
Now, here's the thing. We can come to this in a minute here, but I've got some. I'll still ride that Bronco. We'll
Okay.
talk about it when we get there. But as you said, cut a ton of cap. They have no wide receivers. They got rid of everybody there pretty much. But 2023 results: 11 wins, 6 losses.
6th in passing yards, 7th in rushing yards, and 6th in points scored. So a very, very good offense. I think we're going to cover this team has a lot of changes.
Yeah, whole lot of changes. Where do you want to start with those changes?
Let's just we cover a lot of like injuries and stories from the last year to remember. Nothing really major for injuries. Wideouts were healthy. Running backs were generally healthy. They signed Damian Harris from the Patriots to kind of take over a bruising back role and complement what James Cook does. He was injured. He's been injured his whole career. I don't call that a notable injury. I'd say it was notable if he wasn't injured. Their offensive line, pretty healthy. Across the board, generally pretty good health.
Yeah. So 2024 rundown predictions. Start with the coaching staff.
Some changes. So Sean McDermott returns as head coach. Last year, they fired Ken Dorsey as their offensive coordinator and promoted quarterbacks coach Joe Brady. He is staying on as offensive coordinator. They're continuing with what they had the second half of the year. So not a lot of room for like chaos or change where you could be the one predicting things to change. Basically, not a lot of kind of a known quantity. Not a ton of room to call your shot and get some value.
Yeah. So offensive line.
This is where some of the cap cuts come in. Mitch Morse, their starting center for, I think, every game last year. Enough, if not every game, enough games that it's basically every game. Yeah. Cut based on cap. They cut other depth pieces on the line. But their backup center who didn't have to start, other guys. And then for the line that they're changing, they're bringing in some pieces, and they drafted some guys to fill in depth on this offensive line. But I think they're taking a slight downgrade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their line was okay in 2023. It was obviously good enough to get them as a top 7 offense, but I think they take a step back on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. QB room, Josh Allen.
It's your boy,
baby boy.
Josh, your baby,
dog.
big boy. Last year, quarterback won 24.2 points per game. He is the consensus rank. The consensus rank number 1. So he was actually a huge difference maker between QB1 and QB2. I talked about it with running back 1 and running back 2 when covering the Jets and Breece Hall. He was scoring 2 points more per game than QB2, Jalen Hurts. But for this year, the drop-off seems pretty straightforward. There's not nearly as many options to throw to.
Yeah. You know what I hear when I hear the word drop-off? That's value, baby. That's pure value.
It's not. He's going as number 1.
He's going... Well, I mean, I'm saying within the mindset of who you play fantasy football with. Maybe he doesn't go at number 1 anymore. I don't think people will take him at number 1 because Stephon Diggs is such a big name. Gabe Davis is, he was also good, and he had some good plays too. But here's what I like about Josh Allen. A, he's a dog. That's obvious. He's a dog. But B, he can still run. Like, he will run his ass off. He will run directly into hell and come out uninjured somehow.
Yeah, he's humongous. He's humongous.
He is just unkillable. And until I see him really go down and get hurt, I will ride that lightning.
I will let you ride it.
Because
I will draft someone else.
I think everybody expected the same thing to happen to Patrick Mahomes when they got rid of their wide receiver room and there was young guys and there were a ton of drops. I'll give you that. It wasn't ideal, but by the end of the season, still doing very, very well.
I mean, last year Mahomes was QB8 without receivers. Yeah. I feel like that's the story that's about to happen.
But QB8 is not terrible.
But if you draft him at 1 to be 1, it's not terrible, but it's not value. It's not good production for what you spend.
I think auction-wise, it will be value because, in our auction league, what did I spend on him last year? $56 or something out of 200 or something?
We'll see.
I'm excited. I'm excited for you to be wrong.
I feel like it's pretty straightforward here. Let's jump to running backs.
Yeah, let's go to running back.
All right, James Cook, the main road dog in the running back room. He finished last year as running back 11. He was 12.4 PPR points per game. He's being ranked right now by experts at running back 14, and that feels fine to me. That feels like I could see him jumping up higher into that running back 1 rankings at the end of the year. I mean, if he was running back 7, I'm not surprised. Yeah. If he was running back 6, I'm not surprised. There's one of those guys ahead of him is going to get injured. So, like running back 5, I'm not surprised. I think the upside is in there. He's been getting more work every year since he's been there in Buffalo. In last year, in 2023, they brought in, as we covered, like Damian Harris. They brought in guys to fill a complementary role with him. So Damian Harris missed a ton of time. Latavius Murray, they were giving carries to. They brought in Leonard Fournette to see if he could come in and fill that. And this year, the depth chart is just James Cook and Ray Davis, a third day running back. So even if that rookie is great, he's filling a complementary role. And I think we're going to see a lot of James Cook this year.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think it's really interesting to see his name up there in, at 11 from last season because I'm an idiot and I would not have expected their running backs to get that many touchdowns. But, he's a good player. I mean, from all the names around him in your ECR, yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense to me for where James Cook is sitting at.
So for people listening or watching, that's Fantasy Pros expert consensus ranks. So he's at 14. 15 is Joe Mixon. 16 is Ken Walker. Other guys around that range, 10 is Josh Jacobs. 9, Derrick Henry. 8, Travis Etienne. Like James Cook could be up in that range. I think he feels safe at 14. Like he's got some upside. I feel like the downside of the offense getting worse is already built into his rank. Good to go.
Yeah.
Ray Davis as a rookie 4th round pick. I mean, they were giving work to Latavius Murray late in the season. I think he was like 48 years old out there running in touchdowns. They want someone else running near the goal line. At least they have. So there's opportunity here.
Yeah.
You don't need to draft him. Wide receiver, tons of changes. Stephon Diggs, out. Gabe Davis, out. So that is 240 targets leaving this offense. As I've said in other videos, when this many targets leaves, like it's not always a straight spread that number out to other guys on the team. Sometimes targets just go away. Sometimes production just goes away from an offense. And sometimes a QB1 falls to QB8. Nothing. No response out of you for that. All right, bringing in Keon Coleman, 2nd round pick, top of the 2nd round. The Bills actually traded back from 27. They traded back a few spots at a time, a couple of times before taking Keon Coleman at, I think, 33, 34, so right at the top of the 2nd round. He is going to step into a prominent role, or at least a prominent hole in the offense pretty early on. Whether or not he's ready to, we'll find out over the summer. Other guys coming in, Chase Claypool, who is awful, and Curtis Samuel, who is familiar with this offense and kind of fills a gadget role. You'll see him take carries out of the backfield. You'll see him catching short passes. kind of a unique role compared to most wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking at ranks here and where you would have to draft guys, I forgot to mention Khalil Shakir is still on the team. He's a third-year player. He was drafted in the 5th round. Last year was wide receiver 61. So he's the remaining guy that people think will take a step forward.
Yeah.
He's being ranked as wide receiver 61, where he finished.
So there's a lot of space in front of him to be stepping, is what you're saying.
There's space, yeah, ton of space for all of these guys to be stepping. There's just not enough guys and not enough talent to fill all of what Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis are leaving behind.
Yeah. I think I'm going to add an extra segment here at the end to talk about it more. But I think Curtis Samuel I could see doing pretty consistent good work. Obviously not a wide receiver 1 position in your lineup, but like you said, you could put him in a flex, and I think you get a really, really good flex out of him.
I could see it. I could see it.
I think this is going to be an interesting wide receiver room because I think Josh Allen might take the slightest step down, but then end up right exactly
and then
where
trip,
he was.
and then trip and fall.
Let's talk about tight ends.
Tight ends, Dalton Kincaid, year 2 tight end. Last year finished as tight end 12. That was 7.1 points per game. I think points per game for a tight end is kind of it's a terrible stat because you're really like there's going to be a ton of guys who give you 6 and 5 points a game. Dalton Kincaid finished at 7.1, but he was a rookie last year. Rookie tight ends generally start off pretty slow. He was behind Dawson Knox, so not a lot of receptions in the first month of the season.
Yeah.
In the back half of the season, there was a stretch when Dawson Knox missed time. He was good. He's being ranked as tight end 5, and I think he was that level of good. So I don't really have a problem with him at tight end 5. If people are taking steps forward in this offense, I think it's more likely Kincaid over someone like Khalil Shakir as a wide receiver.
Yeah. So do you think that this is going to be pretty reasonable value, or do you think a lot of people are going to be looking for Dalton Kincaid?
I think the hype on him was pretty high going into last year already. I think people are going to be drafting him right around this range. I don't know that he's someone you could wait to fall and maybe potentially grab him as the 6th tight end off the board. I feel like if you want this guy and you're in a snake draft, you're going to commit and maybe end up reaching to grab him around early. I think the market knows about him. There's a lot of hype about him as the next tight end in fantasy, and there's a clear hole of production for him to eat into.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your big 3 takeaways from this team?
The wide receivers all should still be drafted. Josh Allen is very talented. We don't know who's going to take a step forward, but they're also cheap. I think the consensus ranks on these guys: Khalil Shakir 61, Keon Coleman 51, Curtis Samuel 54. Every one of them will probably get drafted, and they're all fine late round flyer guys because the upside is so big. Second takeaway, James Cook feels a super safe running back too. He feels locked in. Yeah. I have a hard time seeing him fall out of that range. And then number 3, I've said it a bunch of times, I don't see how Josh Allen repeats as quarterback 1. I have him as 4th. I would probably rather have Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson all ahead of him.
Okay.